Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. So good to have you with us on this Friday afternoon. Now, there's a lot of talk today about whether this year's March for Life could be the last, with the U.S. Supreme Court now in the position to overturn the prevailing jurisprudence on abortion, namely the infamous Roe v. Wade decision and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. But while there is great anticipation that the court may correct those past errors when it rules on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, that's the abortion case out of Mississippi, the court has been known to hand down limited incremental rulings. Now, that'd be a big disappointment for sure, but all signs are indicating that the abortion issue is one thing that cannot be swept under the rug by the court. They tried that almost 50 years ago, and it's a bigger issue today than it was then. With me now to talk about all of this and more is our good friend, Senator James Lankford of the great state of Oklahoma. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Sorry, glad to be back with you again.
But before we look ahead, let's look behind. What are your thoughts on the growth and gains of the pro-life movement politically and culturally?
You know, folks looked at this 50 years ago and said, okay, this is a settled issue. The Supreme Court's made their decisions. Everybody just moved on. And people didn't move on because it's self-evident when you look at a child in the womb, and as the science continues to advance, our sonograms get better and better, you see more and more that this is a situation where that's an actual life, not just some random tissue that's there. And so that's made a big difference for people over the years, and people haven't just let this issue go.
Well, and I'd have to point to the fact that, Senator, I think you are a part of this movement in that, you know, as a former Baptist youth director, you know, you came here. This was a big issue. You've spoken about it on the House floor, and I know there's noise in the background. You're down there on the mall where the march has taken place, and the reality is you've spoken about this on the Senate. This is an issue that people care passionately about.
It is an actual issue we care passionately about, and there are thousands and thousands of people that are gathering in Washington, D.C. today, and you're correct. I'm down in the mall area right now even talking to you. There's still thousands of people that are out talking about life and still saying to the Supreme Court and to elected officials, hey, we care about the value of every single child. There are no children that are disposable in our nation. There's no child that you would say, okay, they're inconvenient, and so we can take their life. Children are valuable in the eyes of God, and they should be valuable in the eyes of our laws.
Let me ask you this question because, you know, we've been disappointed by the court before. There is a lot of anticipation that the court, this is such a solid case that the court's going to have a hard time completely overstepping it or sidestepping it. But they have come down with limited rulings before that have disappointed. But if the court thinks they can sweep this issue of abortion under the judicial rug, they're plainly wrong.
Yeah, they're plainly wrong. So what's interesting is in the 1973 decision, Roe v. Wade, they had this conversation about viability. That was not in law anywhere. The court just arbitrarily chose this moment. After viability, states could be involved in protecting the life of children, and before viability, they couldn't. They had to allow abortion on demand in every single state. Now, the court, even in the oral arguments on the Dobbs case, raised the issue about this viability standard, and it was raised in amicus briefs that were given to the court to say that's an arbitrary ruling. That's not out there. How can the court just arbitrarily choose this certain point? That's when a life actually begins. And so what the court has to determine on this case is, can the court actually pick when life begins, or is that a different group that does that, whether it's a legislature or whatever it may be from a state? I think they're going to do that they're going to push it back to the states. And as you mentioned, the limited cases, the Roberts Court is known for limited cases, but there are 6 conservatives in the court now. If Roberts chooses to go with the liberals, the person who would write the opinion on this case would actually be Clarence Thomas. He would be the senior member on the conservative side. And if Clarence Thomas ends up writing this opinion, I have no question it's going to be a very clear statement about the value of every human being.
Well, we continue to see the momentum for life build. It's in the polling numbers. You know, we see it despite of the restrictions here in Washington, D.C. right now with COVID, still thousands coming in for the march. I mean, this, as you said, it's rooted in natural law. It's rooted in the hearts of women. You cannot kill your own children. I know we can suppress it, we can pass laws to try to legalize it, but it will never be morally right, and that sits deeply in the hearts of our country.
It is, and it's self-evident in every such a way. When you look at a sonogram and see a child sucking their thumb in the womb and pressing against their mom's belly with their feet, We understand what's self-evident. That's really a child. And even in our laws in western Oklahoma, it's very difficult to do construction because we have certain requirements for the lesser prairie chicken or for the burrowing beetle in southeast Oklahoma. We seem to be able to protect bugs and lesser prairie chickens, but struggle as a nation to protect children. That is wrong for us, and that has to be corrected.
Senator James Lankford, final question for you. What is your encouragement to pro-lifers as we look forward?
Yeah, the encouragement of pro-lifers is there's a lot to be positive about. There's a lot of dialogue still going on about protecting children. And as they engage in dialogue with people one-on-one, keep the focus on the child, because that's really the point of conversation in this. It's not the two grown-ups that are in the conversation, but it's the child is where we need to be able to focus. What is their future and what's their opportunity for life? The only difference between that child in the womb and the child outside the womb is time. So let's give them the opportunity to be able to have life.
Senator, I said that was the final question, but one political question. Big news off of Capitol Hill this week where the effort was made to push through this federal takeover of elections and then to change the rules in the Senate. Both failed. That was a significant setback for the left, and I think a huge gain for Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate.
It is, actually. We literally protected the Senate from how it has functioned and operated to protect the voice of the minority for 2 centuries. The Senate is the place in our American government where the minority voice is always heard. And Chuck Schumer, as soon as he came into the majority, immediately started trying to silence the voice of the minority in America. That's not how we function as a nation. The Senate forces real debate where all sides are heard, and we still have that protected. So the Senate now is the same as it was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, that the voice of the minority is still protected.
Yeah, big week. So glad to hear from you today. Thanks so much, Senator James Lankford, for joining us.
Glad to be able to do it. Thanks, Tony.
All right, Senator Lankford of Oklahoma.